So it sat for a while, and I thought, you know, I really want to do this research. The paper was out by now where I had said I really want to do this research, it needs to be done, and was getting some good feedback from people that were using the paper with their students, which is really why I wrote it. And so I thought, okay, let's see if we can get some numbers to back this up, or find out. Maybe it's wrong. And so I went back, I had saved the article, I went back and looked. I was thinking he was at Penn State, God forbid, sorry, all you Nittany Lions and Penn people, but he was at Penn. So we contacted the Penn Psychology Department, got his email address, and I emailed him and told him my dilemma, what I was doing here in law school, and I hear he's doing this. At this time, he's still the president of the APA, so he was busy, plus all his other regular work. But I'd like to research this self-esteem thing, blah, 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 in law schools, because I think there's some applications of this positive psychology, because law students and lawyers could be a much happier set of populations than they apparently are. And I'd like to find out why and do something about it. I got an email back from him the same day, or maybe it was the next day, which amazed me. I thought, I'll never hear from this guy, or it'll be 3 weeks. Within 24 hours, Larry, great to hear from you. Sounds like great work. Oh, and I was, you know, why not be bold? I proposed to him, you know, can you help me research this? You know, figure, hey, I'll get in with Marty Seligman, whatever. And he said, thanks, you know, that's not really my direct field, but there are plenty of people that could help you, and I'm going to put you on a listserv of positive psychologists and put your message out. So I did. And I got a couple of suggestions back, and they were hard to follow up on, and I was busy, blah, blah, blah. Ultimately, I just stayed on the listserv, and over a couple of months I was seeing posts from people. There were a lot of interesting discussions there, because they were researching things like well-being and joyfulness and spirituality and hope and thriving and high performance, all the things that define a really strongly developed person, as far as I could tell from the Maslow work and all the other things. So I'm seeing all these conversations, and there was one gentleman who kept bringing in, he was saying the things I would have wanted to say. I didn't really have enough psychology to jump in there and be in those conversations. I just didn't have enough steeping in it. But he was saying, I could relate, and he was going back to the original humanistic roots and defending them and saying, you know, like that. And so I decided I'm going to email this guy who was at Missouri, and that turned out to be Ken Sheldon. And we've been friends ever since. I finally met him at the Washburn Humanizing Legal Education conference last fall. After publishing 2 papers with him and doing research for 8 years, I finally met him in person. But I emailed him my idea. He said, yeah, sure, great, let's do that. Sounds interesting. He sent me a bunch of papers, background. I read it. I said, yeah, this all makes sense. And we devised our first study and found a couple schools. And our plan was originally what I wanted to do, and he was able to flesh it out with real psychology from 2000, not my old 60s notions about psychology, 60s and 70s, but was to take brand new law students, first day of orientation, if we could sample them then, survey them for everything that would matter that we could think of, and then follow everything through their course of law school to see what actually changed, if anything. And that would set to rest once and for all, at least in my mind, the old argument, well, they come to you that way. These lawyers are all self-selecting because they're hyper-competitive and, you know, want to be rich, and so they'll do anything to make money. They already, you know, have that, what turns out to be a bad reputation for their profession, which I never believed, but let's see. So we took them on the first day of orientation, studied them, and then later in the first year, during the second year, and toward the end of school in the third year. And compared all these things, their well-being, And we took some standard measures too, like depression and different scales for anxiety and things like that at first, because we wanted to see, does this replicate what Benjamin did, and does it look like the lawyer study that the dean had showed me? So we used some of the same measures. But then we took all the stuff that in my mind really matters, which is what could be causing this. So part of it was to replicate, is there really some negative things out here? And then the second thing, though, was to look a lot deeper. What else is changing from a personality dynamic standpoint that could be causing this? Or do students come in with personality dynamics that would cause it? Because that's pretty well established now, what those things are. And there's only a few things. It's beautiful. There are some values that if people have those values, they over and over and over again in studies that are done in whatever country you're in, if they have certain values, they tend to thrive, both psychologically and in terms of performance. And there are certain motivations, really only two of them. If they're motivated to do things for these couple of reasons, they thrive. Any other motivation tends to predict unhappiness, depressed mood, anxiety, things like that. And then there were a set of needs, depending on how you count, 3, 4, or 5 needs, that if you have those needs satisfied, psychological needs, you will thrive. You'll feel good, you'll perform well, you'll relate well to people, you'll feel your life will have meaning. Thriving. This is what positive psychology is about. And if you don't get one or more of those needs met on a regular basis, you won't thrive. You'll experience angst, depressed moods, a lack of meaning and purpose in your life. I mean, it describes a lot of lawyers, right? Angst, low mood, lack of meaning and purpose. Let me also say, it doesn't describe a lot of lawyers. There are a lot more lawyers out there who don't have those issues than do have them, in my opinion. Nobody really knows for sure. But the incidence of these problems is so high in the legal profession compared to elsewhere, even based on the earlier studies, we have to ask why. And when you take such a large group of people who are so powerful and have such a strong impact on our society, and even the impression that others have about our society, whether they're in our society or not, the impact is tremendous. And that's not even considering the personal suffering and misery that people go through with the angst, depressed mood, and lack of meaning and purpose in their life. So these needs, values, and motivations are a big part of the story. And as I read those background papers that Ken Sheldon sent me, which was all about this, I thought, yeah, ding, ding, ding. All the bells were going off. Of course. Here's what happens in law. Of course, of course, of course. And so we structured our studies to measure all these things. All of the known predictors of well-being or negative mood. Virtually all of them. There's different ways to slice and dice it, but we took the ones that Ken was expert in and that really cut across everything else.